Move or I'll move you, my grandson said, teeth clenched, voice low. I stepped back, and he fell, arms flailing, chest twisting midair, straight into the pool. The water swallowed his anger with a dull splash. A second passed, then another. Then he surfaced, sputtering and cursing, wet from head to toe in his brand-name sneakers and perfect little golf shirt. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, still holding the potted plant he'd told me to move, or else. My knees trembled, yes, but not from fear. From the weight of 78 years spent swallowing my voice. That day didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building like desert thunder, slow and distant. Then suddenly overhead. When Zachary came to stay with me, he said all the right things. You shouldn't be alone, Grandma. Let me help. You raised me like your own son. His mother, my daughter Claire, called it a temporary arrangement. 2 months, maybe 3, while his apartment was being handled. Something about an investment opportunity gone south. I didn't ask. I never ask much. That's my problem. At first, it felt almost nice. The house felt less quiet. He made us smoothies, played his music, too loud, too much bass, helped me carry groceries. But then it started. You shouldn't eat that, Grandma. Too much sugar. This recliner's bad for your back. You need a digital assistant. I'll set it up. I laughed the first few times, then stopped laughing when he started unplugging things and taking inventory of my cabinets. He moved into the guest room, but gradually took over the den too, then the garage. He had projects. Plastic bins, labels, a whiteboard with bullet points. He was always on his laptop, always whispering on the phone. I didn't pry. One evening I heard him say, "She's stubborn, but I'll get her there. Don't worry, I know how to talk to her." Then silence, then a chuckle. She won't even notice. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. My house smells like citrus oil and old pine. My late husband Roger built most of it with his own hands. He always said, "Whatever happens, Jean, make sure this place stays yours." After he died, I refinanced it once, but I paid it off years ago. No mortgage, no strings. Zachary knows that. He knows too much. Last Tuesday, he came into the kitchen with a manila envelope. "It's just a precaution," he said. "If anything happens to you, emergencies." I didn't even look at the papers. I just said, "I'll have my lawyer look them over." His smile flickered. "Lawyers complicate things, Grandma. I'm family." That word, family. How easily they use it when they want something. I didn't sign. The next morning, my car keys were missing. He said he'd taken the car in for a tune-up. You shouldn't be driving anyway. Then he took my phone and updated it. It started calling him Zach when I asked it questions. I couldn't get it to stop. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. The potted plant, the one by the pool, was an old hibiscus Roger had planted. Every year it bloomed on our anniversary. It's half dead now, but I still water it. It leans toward the sun like it remembers something. That morning, I moved it to its old spot near the edge of the patio, the way Roger liked it. Zach saw it and stopped short. "What's that doing there?" "I moved it," I said. "It gets more light there." "It's in the way," he snapped. "Someone could trip." "I've lived here 46 years, I replied. "No one's tripped yet." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Move it or I'll move you." And something in me cracked. Not fear, not anger. Something older. Something cold and sharp, like the edge of a coin you never spent, because you were saving it for the day they'd understand your worth. So I stepped back, and he fell. He was still yelling when I walked back inside. Wet footprints followed me from the patio door to the hallway, but I didn't stop to clean them. I didn't even look back. Let him drip. Let him stew in it. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection looked pale, almost translucent, like old paper left in the sun. But the eyes, they weren't afraid. Just tired. Tired and clear. I changed my blouse and put on the kettle. He didn't come in right away. Maybe he thought I'd apologize, that I'd offer him a towel, maybe even lunch, like I always did. But that part of me had gone quiet, not dead, just finally resting. The knock on the kitchen door came after 20 minutes. "You could have hurt me," he barked as he walked in without waiting. "You threatened me," I said calmly, pouring water into the cups. "I was just trying to talk some sense into you." "No, Zachary, you were trying to move me. And now look, you got moved instead." He stood there, dripping water onto the tile, breathing heavily like he'd just come back from war. Then his voice dropped into that low, rehearsed tone, the one he used when he wanted something. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I lost my temper. You're not thinking clearly sometimes. It's not safe. That edge by the pool? Someone could get seriously hurt." "You mean like you?" He flinched. I slid the cup across the table. "Sit down. Drink something warm before you catch a cold." He sat, grumbling, took a sip, then pulled his phone from his pocket, wiping the screen dry. "I told Mom you slipped," he said. "Just so you know, I didn't want to get you in trouble." I set my cup down. "You told your mother I slipped and you just happened to fall?" He nodded. I didn't reply. He thought he was protecting me. What he was really doing was protecting himself and the story he wanted to control. That was Zach's real talent, controlling the story. Claire called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was light, overly bright. "Hey, Mom. Zach said you had a bit of a tumble. Everything okay? Maybe it's time we talk about a full-time assistant. Doesn't have to be a big change. Just peace of mind. For all of us." I listened to the message 3 times, then deleted it. That night, Zach cooked dinner. His way of patching things. Salmon with lemon, undercooked rice. No salt. "Heart healthy," he said. I smiled and ate 2 bites, then made myself a sandwich after he left the kitchen. He didn't mention the documents again, but I noticed they were gone from the counter where he'd left them. I assumed he took them back to his room, or worse, put them somewhere I wouldn't think to look. The next morning, the gardener came. A young man named Felix who used to help Roger back when his knees still allowed supervision. I asked him quietly if the hibiscus was too close to the patio edge. He looked confused. "Ma'am, it's always been there." That evening, Zach moved it again, back to the shady spot. He said nothing. I said nothing, but I started writing things down. Roger used to keep a ledger for the house. Not just bills, but events. He called it the log. I found the old book in the hallway cabinet, dusty and yellow, full of his tidy handwriting. I began a new section at the back, labeled it Zach. First entry, Wednesday. Threatened to move me physically. Result, fell into pool. No injuries, no apology. Lied to Claire. That night, as I wrote, I remembered something Roger once said during a fight with Claire. She must have been 19. "You don't talk to your mother like that. She built this house with her patience." Patience. That's what I've always had. What they all counted on. But patience isn't the same as weakness. Zach stayed in his room most of the next day. I heard him pacing, typing, muttering. I knew that rhythm. It was the rhythm of scheming. I'd seen it in my husband when the plumbing failed, in Claire when she tried to switch colleges mid-semester without telling us. A kind of restless calculation. That evening, while washing dishes, I saw something strange. Out by the curb there was a black SUV. No lights on. Engine idling. A man in a navy shirt sat behind the wheel, tapping on a tablet. When I asked Zach about it, he shrugged. Probably someone doing appraisals for the county. But I wasn't born yesterday. I made a note in the log. Thursday. Unmarked SUV parked across the street. Zach dismissed it. House appraisal? Then I went to the drawer in the back hallway. The one with the deed, the insurance, the will Roger and I drafted 20 years ago. Everything was there. But the envelope was open. Next to it, a fresh folder, navy blue, with a modern logo I didn't recognize. Inside, new documents, legalese, financial language. The name Zachary Redford appeared too many times. I stood in the quiet hallway, the folder open in my hands, and I knew it was beginning. The logo on the folder read Red Rock Asset Advisors. I'd never heard of them, but their paperwork was slick, printed on heavy paper, the kind that smells like ink and ambition. There was a mock-up of my house on the second page, outlined in blue with the words potential conversion, short-term rental, or equity release option. I stood there holding it like it might burn through my skin. Zach, I called, trying to keep my voice even. Come here a moment. He emerged a minute later, phone in hand, looking like someone who'd been interrupted mid-conquest. What's this? I held up the folder. He blinked, then gave a short laugh. Oh, that's nothing, Grandma. Just an idea I was playing with. An idea involving my house. He shrugged. I was talking to a guy I know. He's into real estate. Thought maybe we could explore options. You're sitting on a lot of unused capital here, you know. It's not smart. I didn't answer. He stepped closer, slipping into that oily tone again. Part concern, part sales pitch. Look, Grandma, you're one person living in a 3-bedroom house. That doesn't make sense anymore. We could put in a little money, fix it up, rent it out maybe, get you into something safer, more manageable, like a retirement community. They have these really great ones now, full service. Who's we, Zach? He hesitated, just long enough. Me, my friend Jason. He's the one parked outside. He runs the appraisal side. You wouldn't have to deal with any of the paperwork. I'd take care of everything. I put the folder down on the counter, very slowly, like setting down a bomb. Zachary, I said, leave. What? Go to your room, now. He blinked like he hadn't heard me right. Grandma? I said, go to your room. His mouth opened, then closed. His hands went up in surrender, mockingly. Okay, geez, just trying to help. When he disappeared down the hall, I let my hands shake. I didn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I pulled out my old address book, flipped past the dog-eared pages, and found the number for Howard Evans, Roger's old lawyer. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 6 years, but something told me I'd need someone with a memory. The next morning, I called and left a message. Zach was out when I woke up. I took the opportunity to check his room. I wasn't proud of it, but pride is a luxury when you're being quietly erased. His laptop was locked, of course, but his desk drawer wasn't. Inside, 2 more folders, both labeled with addresses. Neither was mine. Notes scribbled in the margins. Flip potential, elder-friendly zoning, quiet neighborhood. There was a checklist, too. Secure signature, begin appraisal, contact Claire, wait until soft sell. Full access granted. That last one was underlined. Twice. I put everything back exactly where I found it. Later that day, Claire called again. This time, I picked up. "Hey, Mom. Zach mentioned you've been under a lot of stress lately." I didn't respond. "Look, this whole setup was my idea, okay? I just thought it'd be nice for you to have someone around, some company. We worry about you." "You never used to worry," I said. "You used to visit." She laughed softly, awkwardly. "Life gets busy. Too busy for your mother, but not for paperwork about her house?" Silence. Then, quickly, "Mom, I don't know what Zach's shown you, but I can assure you no one's doing anything behind your back." "You sure about that?" "Don't be dramatic, Mom." There it was again. The word they always reach for when you don't smile and nod. Dramatic. After the call, I walked through each room of my house and touched what was mine. Not what I'd bought. That's different. But what was mine. The reading chair with the sun-faded cushion. The spice rack Roger built out of scrap wood. The chipped lamp that once sat by his hospital bed. In the guest bathroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. A small woman. Wrinkled, gray, forgettable. That's what they saw. But I remembered the woman who ran a classroom of 30 fifth graders for 20 years, who kept a mortgage paid on a single teacher's salary, who raised Claire alone after Roger's death. I remembered. Howard Evans called back that evening. His voice was the same, slow, certain, with a dry chuckle at the end of every sentence. Well, Jean Redford, I was just telling my wife last week that I hadn't heard your name in ages." "I need help," I said simply. By the time we hung up, I had an appointment for the following Tuesday. He told me what to bring. I told him I'd bring more than that. That night, I added a new entry to Roger's ledger. Friday. Found documents suggesting Zach is planning to liquidate the house. Claire is complicit or uninformed. Lawyer contacted. First move, regain control of story. The next morning, Zach was all charm again. He made me oatmeal. Opened the windows for fresh air. Sat down with a notepad like he was starting some wellness plan. "You ever think about simplifying, Grandma?" he asked. "Like, less clutter, less noise, less stuff to manage. We could get a storage unit." "Help you breathe easier." I looked at him over the rim of my mug. "You know what helps me breathe easier, Zach?" "What?" "Knowing who I am, and that I'm still the one with the keys to the house." Tuesday came, and with it, a sense of quiet resolve I hadn't felt in years. I woke before dawn, brewed my coffee slow, packed my old leather handbag with the deed, insurance, bank papers, and, just in case, a copy of Roger's will. Everything in one place, zipped up like armor. Zach didn't ask where I was going. He just called out from the kitchen, "Want me to pick up oat milk later?" I didn't answer. I just walked out the front door and locked it behind me. I knew now, anything I said, he'd twist. Silence was safer. Howard's office was in a modest one-story building near the courthouse, same place it had always been. The sign had faded. The receptionist was new, but the smell, old paper and stronger coffee, was exactly as I remembered. "Jean," Howard said, standing slowly, smiling like I was still the younger woman with a mortgage problem and a stubborn husband. "Sit. Let's take a look at what you've got." We went through everything piece by piece. He didn't rush, didn't interrupt, just listened, as good lawyers do when something smells off. "So," he said finally, adjusting his glasses, "your grandson's staying with you, has access to your documents, and is clearly maneuvering to gain legal control of the property. You haven't signed anything yet?" "No." He nodded. "Good. First thing, We secure your house. That means a freeze on transfers, a notice of no action without verified approval from your legal representative. That can be me. Second, we draft a revocation of all informal access, financial and legal. Third, we update your will. You want to change the terms? I want the house protected. I don't want it going to anyone who thinks I'm a burden. Howard smiled. We can do that. We'll draft a trust. You'll be the sole lifetime beneficiary. After that, it goes where you want, not where they expect. That word again, expect. That's what Zach and Claire had been trained on, that my life was part of their portfolio. Can I add a condition? I asked. Something about behavior? Howard raised an eyebrow. You want a moral clause? I want a dignity clause. He chuckled, then grew serious. I'll word it carefully. It took an hour. By the end, I had a folder of my own. Real documents. Real power. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen in my chest, like a strap being cut from around my ribs. When I got home, the black SUV was gone. But Zach was waiting in the kitchen, pacing like a man who'd lost control of a meeting. Where were you? He asked. Out. He stared, waiting for more. I gave him nothing. Well, he said finally, you'll be happy to know I've made progress. That guy I introduced to you, Jason, he found an investor interested in the property. I never agreed to anything, I said. Zach smiled thinly. Sure, but I figured we'd get ahead of the curve, just in case. I've been thinking, this house is too much for you, and I've been looking at options for a... If you say retirement community, I'll throw your phone in the pool. He blinked, stunned. I'm not helpless, Zachary, I continued. And I'm not dead. You don't get to rearrange my life like I'm a piece of furniture. That's not fair. What's not fair is using love as a cover for control. You came here saying you wanted to help, but what you want is to manage, to own, to package and sell the scraps of what I built with your grandfather. His face turned red. I'm trying to save you from what? From the life I chose? From the house I paid for? From the damn hibiscus by the pool? He looked away, jaw clenched. You can stop, I said. The paperwork you wanted me to sign? I took it to a lawyer. What lawyer? I didn't answer. Just watched him try to recalculate the game. You have no right. I have every right. It's my house, my life, my money. And let me be very clear, Zachary. If you try one more thing behind my back, if you so much as open another envelope addressed to me, I will call the police, and I will press charges. He stood there frozen. Then, like a switch flipped, he smiled again, tight and bitter. You know what? Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't come crying to me when something happens and you're stuck here all alone. I've been alone before, I said. And at least then, I had peace. That night, I made myself pasta. Real pasta, with salt and cheese. I watched an old detective movie and poured a small glass of wine. I slept through the night without waking. The next morning, Zach didn't speak to me, but I saw him on the phone, whispering again, pacing the length of the backyard. At one point, I heard him say, "She's bluffing. She won't do anything permanent. Just give it a few days." I made a new entry in Roger's ledger. Tuesday, lawyer retained. Will being updated. Zach believes I'm bluffing. That's fine. Let him. By Thursday morning, Zach was back to being polite. Too polite. He brought me coffee, lukewarm, weak, in the mug I never used. Then he spent half the day cleaning the garage, slamming things a little too hard, whistling tunelessly, waiting, I think, for me to blink. I didn't. I trimmed my hibiscus. It hadn't bloomed in years, not since the last big freeze, but the leaves were still trying. They bent toward the sun like they remembered warmth. That's how I felt. Like something still green inside me was reaching, even after all the cold. That afternoon, a white SUV pulled into the driveway. Claire. She hadn't visited in months. Last time she came, she stayed 20 minutes, scrolled through her phone, and left before the tea cooled. This time, she came with intention. "Hey, Mom," she said brightly, holding a paper bag. "I brought those cinnamon rolls you like." I didn't move to take them. She stepped inside anyway. "Can we talk?" I led her to the kitchen. Zach wasn't home. I'd heard his car leave an hour ago, probably making his own calls, preparing his next move. Claire set the bag on the counter and turned to face me, her voice soft. "Zach says you're upset." "I am." She sighed, dramatically. "Look, I know he can be pushy. He's ambitious. That's not a crime." "Ambition isn't the problem," I said. "Deception is." Claire rolled her eyes, the same way she did when she was 16 and grounded for skipping school. "He's trying to help. He worries about you." "No," I said. "He worries about missing his chance. He sees this house as leverage." Claire flinched, then straightened. "That's not fair." I stood. "I want you to listen to me very carefully, Claire. I don't need your son managing my life. I don't need a retirement home, a financial advisor, or an equity release. What I need is to be left alone." "Mom?" "I've updated my will," I said calmly. "And before you ask, no, you're not cut out, but you're not going to manage anything. Neither is Zach." Claire's face went still. "I've appointed a lawyer," I continued. "I've set conditions. If I die, there are instructions. If I live, which I intend to, I will not be moved, manipulated, or reduced." She sat slowly, her tone changing. "You're misunderstanding everything." "Am I?" "Zach told me you were declining." That word, declining, like I was a stock or a bad loan. "He said you weren't remembering things, that you forgot your bank appointments, your medications." "I missed a bank appointment because your son changed the settings on my phone, and I take my medications on time, every time." Claire looked away. "What did you think was going to happen?" I asked. "That I'd just fade out, quietly? That the house would pass to you like a baton?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, I saw her as she was at 5 years old, crying over a scraped knee. But that girl had grown into a woman who'd learned to see people not as people, but as assets. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "No. You thought you were doing the easy thing, letting Zach do the pushing so your hands stayed clean." Silence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough in my life. Over Roger, over lost friends, over the years Claire forgot to call on my birthday. Now I was dry. Clear. "I'm not angry," I said finally. "I'm done. That's all." Claire stood slowly, took the bag of cinnamon rolls, then seemed to think better of it, and left them on the counter. "Zach's going to be upset. I'm sure. And he doesn't give up easily. Neither do I." She hesitated in the doorway. "Are you cutting us off?" "I'm setting boundaries. You can visit, you can call. But you don't touch my money and you don't make plans for me." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She left. That evening, I sat in Roger's old chair and added to the ledger, Thursday. Claire came, offered pastries, not apologies. Confirmed complicity. I am no longer angry. I am no longer afraid. I am simply awake. At sunset, Zach returned. His steps were heavier, his eyes darker. He didn't say hello, didn't ask about dinner, just stood in the hallway, staring. You talked to my mom? I did. She's upset. She should be. He clenched his jaw. So, this is it? You're shutting us out? No, I said quietly. I'm shutting the door you thought was yours to walk through. He said nothing. I'm not your safety net, I added. I'm not a portfolio or a soft place to land. I'm a woman with a name, a house, and a memory. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. The house was quiet the next morning. Not peaceful. Quiet the way an engine goes quiet right before it dies. Zach hadn't left yet, but something in his posture had shifted. He moved slower. He avoided eye contact. He closed his door when he used the phone. He was trying to regroup. I could feel it. I took advantage of the silence. Sorted papers, labeled drawers, wrote instructions for myself, not because I was declining, but because I wasn't going to give them even that inch of doubt. In the afternoon, I found an envelope slipped under my bedroom door. No stamp, no return address. Just one folded page. Grandma, this doesn't have to be like this. I was trying to help you have a better life, a safe one. But if you're not willing to cooperate, I'll have no choice. We'll figure this out, one way or another. Z. No choice. That was the word that lingered. He'd gone from persuasion to warning, and I knew what was coming next. The same tactic they always used on people like me. Fear. I didn't react. I went outside and watered the hibiscus. I remember Roger once told me, during a particularly bad week of bills and setbacks, Jean, the trick isn't staying strong all the time. It's learning when to go still. Let the noise pass, then move. So I went still. That evening, Zach cooked again. Chicken, too much salt. He didn't speak until halfway through. You're going to get yourself hurt. Is that a threat? It's a reality. Then it's one I'll face standing. He dropped his fork. You're being impossible, he snapped. No, I said. I'm being inconvenient. You don't know the difference. He shoved his plate away, stood, and left the room. The screen door slammed behind him like punctuation. I sat alone at the table, chewing slowly, like nothing had happened. That night, I locked my bedroom door. At 2:43 a.m., I heard footsteps. Slow, cautious. The creak of the hallway floorboards. Then silence. Then retreat. I didn't sleep again after that. I just stared at the ceiling, remembering the sound of Claire's first steps on that same floor. Back when she'd run to me in fear, not from me in disdain. The next morning, I called Howard. I want to finalize everything, I told him. No more drafts, no more waiting. It's time. We made an appointment for Friday morning. Zach didn't ask where I was going when I left. He didn't offer coffee, just watched me from the living room like a man standing guard over something he hadn't earned. Howard had everything ready. The new will, the trust, the letters of revocation, the clause I asked for, not a punishment, but a mirror. Any beneficiary who acts to undermine, isolate, coerce, or manipulate the grantor shall forfeit their claim in full. A single sentence, sharp as a needle. I signed every page. When it was done, Howard looked up and said, "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Doesn't mean much coming from people our age," he said gently. I smiled. "I'm fine, Howard. For real." On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store. Bought peaches, real ones, soft and bruised and cheap. The cashier called me ma'am and asked if I needed help carrying them. I said no, thank you. It felt good to carry something that was mine and mine alone. Back home, Zach was sitting on the patio, shirtless, smoking a vape he thought I didn't know he had. "Where were you?" he asked. "I've decided to make a few changes." He laughed, but it didn't sound real. "You're serious, huh?" "I'm serious. I could fight this, you know." "You could. I could say you're confused, that you're not thinking clearly. People believe that kind of thing." "They do," I said, "until they read the documents." He fell quiet. "I used to think you were different," I added. "Not because you were kind, but because you were young, that youth hadn't turned cruel yet." I was wrong. He stood, flicked the vape into the bushes, and walked inside without a word. That night, I sat in my room and wrote in Roger's ledger, Friday. Final documents signed. Threats becoming direct. House now legally secure. I am not afraid. I am prepared. Zach didn't speak to me the rest of the night. The next day was Saturday. It would be our last day together. Saturday started too quiet. The air felt heavy, like before a monsoon. That hot, dry stillness that presses against your skin and says, something's coming. I made tea, opened the curtains, and waited. Zach didn't come out of his room until past 10. When he did, he was freshly showered, dressed in what he thought looked professional. Collared shirt, pressed pants, expensive watch. He sat across from me at the table and didn't touch the cup I'd left for him. "I talked to my mother," he said. "I figured. She's concerned. She should be." He leaned forward, trying to look gentle. "Look, Grandma, I know this last week got weird, but we've all been under pressure. Me especially. I'm just trying to build a future." "You can build your future without tearing into mine." He smiled, small and patronizing. "I think you've misunderstood my intentions." "No, Zach. You've misunderstood my silence for approval. That's over now." He looked away, then back, colder. "Do you really think locking things down is going to stop me?" "I don't think anything," I said. "I act." His smile cracked for real. "You've made a mess of this, you know. All you had to do was sign. You'd be taken care of." "I've taken care of myself for 78 years. I don't plan to stop now." He stood. "Fine. Then don't come crying when—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't finish that sentence." We stayed like that for a beat. Him standing, me sitting, tea cooling between us. Then he walked out. The rest of the day passed in brittle slowness. I watered the plants, wrote 2 letters, looked through old photos, not out of nostalgia, but clarity. I wanted to remember who I was before they tried to rewrite me. At 4 o'clock, Zach came into the living room again. This time, no performance. "I'm leaving tomorrow." Good. But not without one last conversation. I looked at him. "Go on. I think you're making a mistake. You've poisoned your own family against you." "No," I said. "I've removed the poison from my family." "You're burning bridges." They were bridges to nowhere. His voice dropped to a whisper, tight with restraint. "You're going to regret this. I regret letting it go this far." And that's when he said it. "Move," he hissed, stepping forward. "Move, or I'll move you." It wasn't loud, wasn't theatrical, but it was real. The look in his eyes was different this time. Not annoyance, not manipulation, but fury. The kind that flares when a plan collapses and there's nothing left but force. I was standing near the patio. My hibiscus just behind me. The edge of the pool a few feet away. He stepped toward me again, and I stepped back. He didn't expect that. His foot missed the edge. He tried to correct, flailed, too late. His whole body pitched forward, twisting midair. And the pool took him. The splash was big, sudden, clumsy. He surfaced instantly, gasping. I didn't run. I didn't call out. I just stood there, letting the desert sun fall on my shoulders, calm as stone. He pulled himself out, drenched and shaking with cold and rage. "You're crazy!" he shouted. "You did that!" "No," I said. "You did." He stared at me, water streaming from his sleeves. "I want you out of this house," I said. "Tomorrow. No more stalling. No more phone calls to your mother. No more schemes. You pack your things, and you go." "You're serious?" "Yes." "You have no idea what you've done." "I do," I said. "For once, I know exactly what I've done." He didn't argue, just stormed inside, dripping water onto the tile. I didn't follow. I sat down beside my hibiscus, fingers in the warm dirt, and let myself breathe. He left the next morning. No ceremony, no suitcase. Just a backpack slung over his shoulder and a duffel bag he'd taken from the hall closet. He didn't say goodbye. Didn't look me in the eye. He walked out the front door like he'd never lived here. Like the past 2 months hadn't happened. The sound of his car pulling away was short and sharp. Like a door slamming somewhere far down a hallway. I didn't watch from the window. I didn't need to. I just sat at the kitchen table with my cup of tea and the Sunday paper, my hands resting lightly on the quiet. It wasn't relief I felt. Not exactly. It was room. Room to think. To breathe. To take up space in my own house without being observed, corrected, redirected. I walked through each room that morning with a rag and a spray bottle. Not to clean, but to reclaim. Every surface I touched had felt occupied these past weeks. The counter where Zach laid out his plans. The cabinet he reorganized without asking. The hallway he paced like a landlord. I opened windows. Let the dry Arizona air move through. Dusted shelves that hadn't been touched in months. Rearranged the chairs back the way Roger liked them. One facing the door, one angled toward the kitchen. By noon, it felt like my house again, but the quiet didn't last long. Claire called at 12:17. I let it ring. Then again at 12:21 and 12:30. The fourth time, I picked up. "Mom," she said sharply, "Zach's gone." "I know." "He said you kicked him out." "I did." "You can't just do that. Where is he supposed to go?" "I assume back to the apartment he supposedly lost. Or to you." "Mom, you can't." "I can," I said, and I did. She exhaled hard, like I'd just pulled a stunt instead of drawing a line. "You're acting completely irrational." "No, I'm acting like someone who's done being used." "Zach said you pushed him." "He fell. Into the pool. He's fine." "He said you were yelling. That you lost control." "He said a lot of things, Claire. I have them all written down." That stopped her. Just for a second. "You're keeping records?" "Yes." She laughed, bitter and short. "Jesus, Mom. What's next, cameras?" "Maybe," I said. "Depends how safe I feel." The line went quiet. I waited. Then, softer, she said, "You know he's not a bad person. He's just young. And I'm not a weak person. I'm just old. Which one of those do you think you've misunderstood more?" She didn't answer. "You raised a boy who doesn't know the difference between help and control. Who thinks access is entitlement? You may not have taught him that directly, Claire, but you let it grow in him." "I didn't mean, but you did. You meant it every time you let him speak for you. Every time you excused his behavior because he was just being ambitious." Silence again. Don't call me for a while, I said. Let's give each other space. You're serious? As a heart attack. Then I hung up, and this time, I didn't feel guilty. That afternoon, I finally opened the book I'd been meaning to read for months, a mystery novel I'd bought last spring. I sat on the porch with a glass of lemonade and the dog-eared first chapter. The hibiscus rustled behind me, lazy in the breeze. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor's radio played an old jazz tune. I read 3 chapters without checking my phone. When the sun dipped low, I went inside and made myself real dinner. Not the dry health food Zach had pushed on me, but buttered potatoes and roasted chicken. I didn't measure anything, just cooked by instinct the way Roger liked to. I lit a candle, not because it was fancy, but because it was quiet. That night, I slept with the door open. No footsteps, no whispers, no creaking floorboards, just air, just stillness, and me. On Tuesday morning, I woke to a knock at the door. 3 slow raps, not urgent, not polite either. Just patient. I knew before I opened it who it would be. Claire stood on the porch in her office clothes, sunglasses perched on her head, a phone clutched too tight in one hand. Her smile was thin, careful, the kind people wear to funerals. Can we talk? I said I needed space. It's important. I stepped aside. She walked in like she owned the floor plan. Didn't even glance at the living room where I'd moved the chairs back. She went straight to the kitchen and sat where Zach used to sit, like nothing had happened. I stayed standing. I've been talking to Zach, she started. He's shaken. I'm sure falling into a pool will do that. She didn't laugh, just opened her purse and took out a folder. That a new family tradition now? I asked. Show up with papers when words stop working? It's not like that. Of course it is. I didn't sit. I didn't even touch the folder. Claire exhaled. This is a suggestion. A softer path. To where? To a solution where you're safe and we're not cut out of your life. I'm not the one who walked out. You pushed him. He threatened me. I stepped back. He fell. Claire stared. Then, as if reading from a script she didn't fully believe, she said, Mom, I think you're having trouble with judgment, with memory. There's been concern. My body went cold, but my voice didn't flinch. You're calling me incompetent. I'm saying we might need to look at some options. Mediation, maybe some kind of shared arrangement for your estate. No. Mom, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for decades. Now I'm being direct. I picked up the folder, didn't open it, just held it in one hand while I walked to the trash can and dropped it in. Claire's mouth opened, then closed. I've already made my legal decisions, I said. With a lawyer, you're not involved. You think this is what Dad would have wanted? For you to be alone, suspicious of your own family? I think he'd have told you to sit down and shut up until you remembered who raised you. Her face twitched, that old line between guilt and pride. I didn't come here to fight. Then you shouldn't have come with paperwork. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The clock ticked. The ice in her water glass melted. Finally, she said, You're not the only one hurting, Mom. This has affected all of us. No, I said. This has exposed all of you. There's a difference. She stood, smoothed her blouse. If you ever change your mind, I won't. She walked to the door, stopped, turned. You think Zach's the only one who's going to come back? You've stirred up something now. There's more than one person interested in what you've got. I'm not afraid. You should be. I closed the door behind her and locked it. That evening, I sat on the porch again, but I didn't read. I just watched the street. 3 cars I didn't recognize drove past. One too slowly. One stopped, reversed, then kept going. That night, I took the key from the drawer and opened the old chest in my closet. Roger's documents. The backup copies. The numbers I hadn't looked at in years. They were still solid, still protected. But I added a new step. I moved everything into the small safe in the guest bedroom, the one they didn't know about. Set a new code, wrote it down nowhere, and then I wrote one more note in Roger's ledger. Tuesday. Claire came with folder. Suggested shared control. I refused. The game has escalated. I am no longer surprised. I am only alert. I didn't leave the house for 3 days after Claire's visit, not because I was frightened, because I was watching. Small things started changing. The mail arrived later. Twice, it didn't arrive at all. The trash bins were turned sideways in the driveway, lids open. I always shut them. I found a grocery receipt wedged between the slats of the porch bench, but it wasn't mine. Canned soup, 4 Red Bulls, menthol cigarettes. Then, Wednesday night, the doorbell rang just after 8 p.m. I didn't answer it. I watched from the darkened hallway. A young man stood there. Thin, ball cap, phone in hand. He rang once more, then left. No package. No uniform. When I opened the door 10 minutes later, a flyer was folded under the mat. Life transition consultants, your home, your peace, our priority. Zach didn't know how to quit, but he knew how to delegate. That night, I couldn't sleep. I moved through the house like I used to when Claire had fevers as a child. Quiet, alert, steady. At 3 a.m., I sat in Roger's old chair and read through the trust documents again. I wasn't looking for reassurance. I was looking for gaps. There were none. But still, I felt it. That slow tightening. The pressure of being watched, even when alone. I called Howard first thing in the morning. "I want to finalize the second layer," I said. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He didn't try to soften it. He knew what this was. By Friday, it was done. A second trust. Smaller, private, locked, and irrevocable. Its contents listed only by coded identifier. It would hold the liquid funds. The kind Claire and Zach had always danced around like birds circling a pond. Now they wouldn't even see the water. The house remained in the first trust, still mine, until death. But everything else, retirement accounts, investments, even the land parcel Roger had bought in '87 that no one remembered, was shielded, quietly and legally. When I left Howard's office, the sun was bright and indifferent. I felt no victory, no relief. But I did feel clean. That evening, I pulled out my calendar. I circled dates, not birthdays, not holidays, appointments, legal checkpoints, reviews, like a gardener walking a fence line, checking for breaches. I cooked myself a full dinner. I left the porch light off. I read until midnight. Then I wrote in the ledger. Friday. Final protections in place. Secondary trust established. Funds moved. If they come back now, they come to an empty vault. The weekend passed without contact. Claire didn't call, Zach didn't text. But someone came by. I knew it. The front gate latch had been lifted. Not broken, just unhooked. The small things that tell the truth better than words. I sat on the porch Sunday morning, watching the sunrise. It looked the same as every other sunrise. But I was different. I was no longer hoping they'd call or come around with apologies. That part of me had gone quiet. Not bitter, not angry, just settled. I'd stopped waiting to be loved the way I loved. On Monday morning, the phone rang again. Not Claire, not Zach. A woman's voice, smooth, professional. Mrs. Redford? I'm calling on behalf of Red Rock Advisors. We've been asked to verify recent changes to your estate plan. I'm sorry, I said. Who requested that? Your grandson, Mr. Zachary Redford. I let her finish the sentence. Then I hung up. I didn't call back, didn't explain. They already had their answer. By noon, there were 2 new voicemails, one from Zach. You're making this harder than it needs to be. And one from Claire. I think we're past the point of passive-aggressive tactics, Mom. Let's be adults. That word, adults, as if all it took to be one, was a mortgage and a voicemail password. I spent the afternoon baking. Real baking. Flour under the nails, butter in the air. I made the lemon cake Roger used to love, dense, not too sweet. While it baked, I sat at the kitchen table and sharpened pencils. It's funny what steadies you when the world tries to make you feel small. That evening, I took a walk. I hadn't gone farther than the mailbox in weeks. But now I put on my sandals and headed down the block, past the neighbors' tidy yards, past the corner where the big prickly pear cactus still leans. 3 different people waved. One woman, Margaret, 2 doors down, asked how I was. Getting stronger, I said. She smiled. I can see that. When I got home, there was a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. Lights off. Engine running. I stared at it from the porch. Didn't flinch. Didn't go inside. Eventually, it pulled away. The next morning, I visited the bank. I'd made an appointment the week before, just in case. The manager was polite. A young man who wore too much cologne and called me Mrs. Jean, like we were in the South. I smiled, signed the documents. He asked if I wanted to leave a note on the accounts for family access. No, I said. No access, no inquiries, no assumptions. His hands moved a little slower after that. When I left the bank, I drove through town with the windows down. It smelled like dust and sunlight. I hadn't driven that far in months. It felt like proof. Not that I could, but that I still wanted to. That night, I slept with the window open. The air was warm. The house was quiet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone might be listening. I wrote in the ledger, Tuesday, attempts to breach estate protections confirmed. Phone calls traced. No reaction, no permission, no fear. I remain the sole author of my life. The next time they came, they didn't knock. It was Thursday, just after noon. I was trimming the lavender by the back fence when I heard the voices. Low, tense, unmistakable. Claire, Zach, and someone else. A man's voice I didn't recognize. Professional. Controlled. I didn't go inside. I waited. They came around the side yard as if they had every right to be there. Zach in sunglasses, Claire with her arms folded, and the man, 40-ish, expensive shoes, holding a sleek black folder. Mom, Claire said, we've brought someone to help clarify things. I didn't move. The man stepped forward. Mrs. Redford, I'm Colin Dreyfus. I represent families in transition. Claire and Zach reached out with concerns about your safety, your memory, and your financial well-being. We're here to discuss your future options. My future belongs to me, I said. He smiled the way professionals do when they're paid not to show offense. Of course. We'd simply like to explore a supported decision-making arrangement. No pressure, just clarity. I have clarity. Zach exhaled sharply. Grandma, stop pretending you don't need help. I stopped pretending when I let you fall in that pool. He looked away. Claire stepped in. You're making this worse than it needs to be. You're creating paperwork mazes and locking us out of your life. I'm securing my life from people who see me as an obstacle. You're being paranoid. No, I said. I'm being precise. There's a difference. Mr. Dreyfus raised a hand. Mrs. Redford, with your permission, we can initiate a family review, not a legal override, just a conversation with a mediator and a physician. No. There may be alternatives. No. Zach stepped forward. You don't get to just shut us out. I do, and I have. He looked like he might scream, but he didn't. He turned to Dreyfus, who only nodded and closed the folder. We'll follow up in writing, he said. You do that, I said, and I'll send it straight to my lawyer. Claire tried one last time, her voice softer now. Don't do this, Mom. You're pushing us away. I'm placing you exactly where you belong, outside the fence, wondering how you ever mistook my kindness for surrender. No one spoke after that. They left by the side gate, the same way they came in. I stood there in the heat, my hands smelling of lavender and metal. Then I went inside and turned the lock. That evening, I sat on the porch with a notebook and wrote not just what happened, but why. Not for protection, for memory. Because what they fear most is not my anger, but my record. They thought time had worn me down. But what time actually gave me was precision, patience, a memory that's heavier than their ambition. In the ledger I wrote, Thursday. They came with a man in a suit, tried to sound polite, tried to sound helpful. They were neither. I did not flinch. I did not move. I remembered who I am. Then I underlined the date, just once. I expected them to come back, but they didn't. Not the next day, not the one after. There were no more phone calls, no more cars across the street. Just silence. Thick, humming, unfinished. The kind that follows a slammed door but not a locked one. On Saturday morning, I found the hibiscus blooming. 2 pale pink flowers, both imperfect, both open wide to the sky. I knelt beside it, not to tend, but to look. Roger planted it the year after his diagnosis. He said he needed something to anchor the days. Something that wouldn't ask questions, just grow. It had held on through frost and drought and years of neglect. I never watered it right, never trimmed it the way the book suggested. But it survived. Somehow. That's what it meant now. Not beauty, not memory. Survival. I brought out the hose and watered it slowly, deliberately, soaking the roots, letting the dirt darken beneath my feet. In the afternoon, I opened the ledger again. It was nearly full, not just of notes about Zach or Claire, but little things too. Dreams I'd remembered, names of old neighbors, phone numbers I'd thought I'd forgotten. It had become something else now. Not a defense, but a voice. Not loud, just present. I turned to a blank page and wrote, Saturday. Flowers on the hibiscus. No calls, no visits. Stillness is not silence. It's space. I am no longer being pulled. I am holding. Then I sat by the window with a cup of tea and watched the light move across the floor. At 5:12 p.m., the doorbell rang. But this time, it was Margaret from down the street. She held a bowl of soup in one hand and a folded newspaper in the other. I had a feeling you might not have eaten, she said. I have, I replied, but I'll eat again. She came in without ceremony, placed the soup on the counter, and sat. She didn't ask questions, just handed me the paper and pointed to a short column near the bottom of the community page. Red Rock Advisors under investigation for unlicensed estate activity. I read it twice, then once more, slower. The name Zachary Redford was not mentioned, but I knew. They were at my door last week, I said. She nodded. They've been going door to door all over town. One of them tried to talk to my cousin in Apache Junction. Told her she was sitting on dead equity. She called the police. Good. We sat in silence for a while. Then Margaret looked at me and said, "You know, I've been meaning to ask. That ledger you carry everywhere. What is it?" "It's not for carrying," I said. "It's for remembering." She smiled, and her eyes softened. "Well, keep writing. Whatever it is, it's working." After she left, I stood in the hallway with the paper in one hand and the soup untouched, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not safety, not victory, just steadiness. Like the house had finally exhaled. I wrote again in the ledger. The names are falling apart, the suits are folding, the circle is closing, and still I am here, still in my chair, still at my table, still mine. Then I put the ledger away. For the first time since all this began. Sunday morning brought no surprises. The world outside carried on. Dogs barking, sprinklers ticking, someone mowing too early across the street. I sat on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee and listened without reacting. It was background now. Noise I didn't owe anything to. Zach hadn't called in a week. Claire neither. I knew they were out there, circling in silence, unsure whether to regroup or retreat. But whatever decisions they made next, they'd make without me. That door had closed. I didn't slam it. I just locked it quietly and stepped away. In the garden, the hibiscus had dropped one flower. The other still held. Petals open, a little bruised around the edges. I understood that. Margaret dropped by again that afternoon. This time she brought me tomatoes from her yard, still warm from the sun. We sat inside with glasses of water, and she asked if I'd thought about joining the Tuesday book club at the library. I told her I hadn't read fiction since Roger died. "Well," she said, "maybe it's time to start again. You've earned the space to imagine." That word stuck with me. Imagine. Like a light cracking through thick shutters. Like a path that didn't end at defense, but turned toward something else. That night, I walked through each room of my house again, like I'd done weeks before. But this time, I wasn't checking for signs of intrusion. I was reacquainting myself with what was mine. The hallway with the photo of Claire at 5 years old, holding a paper crown. The pantry where Roger used to sneak dried apricots. The bedroom window that still whined when opened too far. I said each part out loud under my breath. This is the room where I forgave things I wasn't ready to. This is the chair where I almost gave up. This is the light that stayed on when no one noticed. No one had to hear it. Not really. But I did. I needed to remind myself that survival wasn't just about pushing back. Sometimes it was about staying still long enough to know you were still standing. I slept soundly. No dreams. No half-waking anxiety. Just the slow, grounded breath of someone who had made it through something. Monday morning, I got a letter in the mail. From Howard. He'd sent copies of the final trust documents and a note in his neat, slanted handwriting. You were right to act. You were right to wait. And you were right not to let silence replace clarity. I folded the letter and placed it in the ledger. Not as a warning, as a record. That afternoon, I cleared out the guest room, washed the linens, opened the windows. It wasn't an act of hospitality. It was cleansing. The scent of bleach and open air was oddly satisfying. In the closet, I found an old shoebox I hadn't touched in years. Letters from Roger. Notes from Claire in crayon. A photograph of Zach at 12 holding a model rocket. His face hadn't yet learned calculation. I didn't cry. But I didn't put it back in the closet either. I left it on the shelf, unsealed. Not as a welcome, just as truth. That evening, Margaret called. "We're reading The Good Earth next month," she said. "Come for the first chapter. No one expects anything." I said yes, not out of politeness, but because, finally, I wanted to go. Tuesday came warm and quiet, the kind of day you don't notice unless you've lived through noise. I opened the windows early, let the air pass through every room like a guest finally welcome. I brewed coffee the way I liked it, strong, without apology, and sliced one of Margaret's tomatoes for breakfast. It tasted like summer used to. There were no messages on the phone, no visitors. Just stillness. The real kind. I put on a soft sweater, even though the day didn't call for one, and walked to the library. The woman at the desk smiled when I gave my name. "Book club's just starting," she said. "We're in the back room." I almost turned around, not out of fear, just the reflex that comes after too many months of bracing. But I didn't. I walked in, 10 folding chairs, a circle, a few nods. No one asked where I'd been. We read the first chapter of The Good Earth. I didn't say much, just listened. But my voice didn't feel lost anymore. It felt paused, ready. Afterward, Margaret squeezed my hand. "Next time, you'll have to tell us what you think." "I will." The walk home was slow, on purpose. I let myself notice things. The chipped paint on the old fence 3 houses down. The bird feeder someone had hung from a saguaro. The smell of warm rock and mesquite. My house waited. Not looming, not asking. Just there. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the ledger one last time. There were only 3 blank pages left. I filled one. Tuesday. No threats, no questions, no echoes. The air is quiet and mine again. They may circle, they may whisper, but they will not enter. This house remembers who it belongs to. So do I. I closed the book, didn't lock it away, didn't hide it. Just set it on the shelf next to the others. Cookbooks, paperbacks, the collection of birdwatching guides Roger never used but liked owning. Later that day, I took the lemons from the counter and made another cake. No occasion, just muscle memory. I wrote down the recipe on a fresh index card and tucked it into the kitchen drawer, where someone might find it someday. But not for a while. That night I lit a candle. No guests, no event. Just me. And I said, not aloud, but clearly, I was not moved. I moved myself. Then I let the flame burn low and go out. If you've ever been made to feel small in your own home, in your own life, let this be your reminder. You are not the guest. You are the house.